hero pool? B. Patch OP hero. C. Counter opponent's core player. D. All in a BO7 game. The answer is D. The next point is extremely important and applies to our daily work: improving the quality of BP. BP in training matches should always serve the purpose of actual match. You can test some strategies, but ultimately everything needs to return to the demands of competitive play. BP should be a way to understand your players and select the most suitable ones, especially if you're a new coach coming in trying to level up the team quickly. Then your BP must be high quality. That means every step should be intentional. Use the process to evaluate the team's proficiency with lineups, synergy with different hero combos, and overall readiness at each development stage. It's about using BP as a mirror to reflect your team's real strengths and weaknesses. Then, identify which positions on the team need reinforcement, or which players need more communication and development. Once you've identified these, give them targeted tasks to improve. And when it comes to transfers, it's crucial to recruit the right players. Don't just go for the most expensive options. Don't force players to practice heroes which don't fit their playstyles. Instead, focus on helping them improve their personal understanding of the game. This is the progress that high-quality BP in training can deliver. Another common challenge that many coaches often encounter is expanding players' hero pools. This is especially relevant for overseas players who might not have been playing the game for very long, so their hero pools are often quite limited. Some players might be extremely good at a few heroes, but refuse to play tank junglers. Others may only know how to play tanks, but can't perform on carry junglers because of skill limitations. There are also players who are comfortable with traditional mage heroes, but struggle with crucial picks like Mai. What do you do with players like this? What if they're reluctant to practice certain heroes, or they just can't seem to master them? In that case, you have to consider what the team's overall needs. If a player has a completely different playstyle and doesn't have the mindset or understanding needed for a specific role, then playstyle integration becomes very difficult. It's inevitable that the player will have strengths and weaknesses. Maybe they can perform at a 90% level on carry junglers, but only 70% on tank junglers. In such cases, you either need to prepare for a rotation substitution system or transfer the player and bring in someone whose playstyle fits the team better. Otherwise, it could cause ongoing issues with training and BP. That's the reality of hero pool expansion. If you're a new coach and want to help your team improve quickly, here's how I approach it. First things first, get to know your team. Spend time with them in daily BP training to get a feel for the lineup. Learn each player's hero pool and get a sense of the team's overall play style. Is it aggressive or more calm and steady? Once you've got that, evaluate the team's lineups. Look at how mature their current meta are and check players' fundamentals like mechanics and game sense. Next, figure out who the core player is. Build your lineups around them and focus on improving proficiency with the lineups your team already plays well. Reinforce those strengths and keep building on them. While doing that, don't forget to work on the basics: laning, jungle pathing, vision control in the river, and so on. Once you've got a handle on that, start scouting your opponents. Before matches, simulate BP scenarios, gather enemy data, and use it to run targeted scrims focused on your strongest lineups. In the end, the goal is to get your team to a point where they have a clear identity and their lineups allow all 5 players to shine. A team that can adapt to different opponents, execute different strategies, and has solid fundamentals. That's when you know your team is maturing and becoming truly competitive. These are some of my personal thoughts on BP strategy. Next, let's take a look at some discussions around the current patch. Let's take a look at the Invitational S3 finals, Nova versus Nongshim. The average game length just 1531, and what stands out is the 100% usage of tank junglers across the board. In Game 1, Nova went with Wukong, one of their signature picks, and they built their entire lineup around it. The data shows a very aggressive style patch, with high skirmish frequency early to mid-game, and most matches closing out by mid-game. In the final, Nova picked Guan Yu, Aogran, Mai Shiranui, Diadia, and Arlie. Nongshim responded with Dolia, Lung, Mai Shiranui, Aogran, and Sunsei. At 10 minutes, tank junglers and fighter side laners are extremely dominant. If they're ahead in gold, they've got enough power to close out games. That's why the Dark Tyrant at the 10-minute mark is extremely important. In dragon fights, if your tank junglers and fighter side laners are ahead in economy, they can decisively end the fight. There's a strong emphasis on mid-lane vision control, because in this tank junglers meta, junglers can help mid-laners secure lane control. In terms of lineup structure, teams are building around strong, reliable heroes. For example, Diadia and Dolia control the top half of the map with those small jungle skirmishes, while the bot lane, with ADC and support, works together to apply lane pressure. Supports like Diadia and Dolia are particularly good at controlling vision around the river. In teamfight, the current trend emphasizes mid-lane control, fighting for mid-vision priority. Side laners and supports focus on finding flank positions in river areas. Of course, some heroes can still be unique strategic picks, like Nova's Wukong, which was a personal signature pick by the player. As for future meta trends, in my opinion, and based on how the Chinese server evolved, this tank junglers and fighter side laners ecosystem will likely continue for quite a while. The importance of BP will become greater and greater. A strong lineup will heavily influence the outcome, rather than relying 80–90% on individual mechanical skill. Even there's a clear gap in team strength. A weaker team with better BP can still be competitive and make the match close. When two teams are evenly matched, the one with the better BP will likely gain the upper hand. Additionally, this patch heavily emphasizes mid-lane and river vision control. We may start to see more lane swap tactics, especially because with the current tank junglers and fighter side laners meta, there are some very powerful solo laners like Byron and Sansi who are dominant in lane. But if farmline combo like Diadia and Ali face equally strong enemy combo or heroes, especially when the opponent's BP targets your lane can become a weakness. In those situations, lane swaps become a valuable tactic. It's a way to shift the balance, either to strengthen your own advantage or to punish the opponent's weaker side. Third, expect more emphasis on flanks and anti-flanks in river fights. There'll be more frequent fights in the mid lane. Both teams will likely mirror each other's moves around river control, and in the end, one well-timed flank could be the difference, turning a 5v5 into a 5v4 advantage. Now let's talk about some BP concepts under the current patch. First is hero understanding. I think there are several heroes in the current patch that don't really have natural counters. Take Mai Shiranui, for example. If the enemy doesn't have Haya, Jinchan, or Chang'e, she can completely dominate the mid lane. Those three are the only true counters. Other heroes like Yixing, Lady Zhen, or Xuan might try to challenge her, but they're not reliable counters. Mai Shiranui's high mobility, CC, and strong presence in teamfights make her a beast. She takes full control of mid, helps side lanes secure early resources, and excels in every phase, early, mid, and late. That's why she's arguably the most powerful and irreplaceable mid laner right now. Next up, we've got Arlie plus Diadia. Arlie has no real counters in the current Hokkey patch. The Ge-Ya Luban combo, a traditional counter, isn't present, other potential counters like Direnjie, Chano, or Lady Sun aren't ideal. They're mostly scaling ADCs. Direnjie, in particular, struggles against strong side laners like Neja because he lacks mobility and can get caught out easily. Diadia pairs perfectly with Arlie, applying massive pressure in lane. Diadia excels in Ashoka due to the lack of strong Liang and Princess Frost lineups and the lack of the Master system. She has great sustain, high mobility, multi-phase control, and a strong AoE in teamfights. She can CC the enemy's core from a distance or dive in with teammates. When it comes to the jungle role, Orgren really stands out. As we saw in the Invitational Finals, both teams picked Orgren jungle without hesitation. He's a monster in early to mid skirmishes and in 2v2 mid lane fights. He can solo push mid lane, contest jungle, and invade with ease. Once he gets levels and gold, his scaling is top tier among tank junglers. Even though he's weak without items, his performance still makes him one of the best tank junglers out there. Dharma as a side laner isn't incredibly strong, but his team fight value is insane. His stats are a bit overtuned, and his engaging abilities are solid. Unlike Guan Yu or Sun Ce, who need setups and long flanks, Dharma can just walk out of a bush, flash in, and immediately threaten carries. His flank requirements are lower, which makes him more reliable in chaotic fights. That's why I consider him a top-tier teamfighter in this patch. Then, I want to talk about some potentially unstoppable heroes in future metas. First up, Byron in the Clash lane. In terms of landing, he can suppress almost every other fighter. He's pretty much unbeatable in lane. Even in lane swap strategies, Byron holds up really well under pressure. What makes him even more valuable is his synergy with support and mid laners in skirmishes, as well as his ability to invade the jungle. If the HOK region shifts toward more jungle-centric playstyles, Byron becomes a top-tier pick for the side lane. Another one is the support Ming. Ming combined with Lady Sun can form a powerful lane that effectively suppresses the Diadia plus Arlie combo. If Lady Sun's mechanics are on point, this combo can match the oppressive power of meta farm lanes. In the current Shock patch, Lady Sun is actually a strong ADC, but she's a bit limited by the presence of powerful fighter-side laners that make her positioning in teamfights tricky. But with Ming's support helping her farm and set up, they become a much stronger combo. A farmed Lady Sun can dish out insane damage. Ming also pairs really well with other heroes like Direnjie and Lung, helping them cover their weaknesses. For example, Ming can give Lung extra damage in the early game. He can also support mid and jungle carries, helping them scale better. I believe he's a potential breakout support pick in upcoming patches. Of course, there may be other strong heroes like Liang or the jungle Agudo. These are also OP candidates. You can discuss and reflect on what you think will rise next, what tactics will develop, and which heroes may slowly fade out of the meta. Even with basic hero evaluations, we can't forget about the importance of counters. These are based on role-to-role characteristics and stats, and they don't always last the whole game. Some are just for the laning phase, while others can influence the entire match. This is most obvious in mid and side lanes. Let's use mid lane as an example. We usually classify mages into assassin mages, canon mages, and utility mages, or we can classify them by range: assassins, long range, and short range. Assassin mages include Mai Shiranui, Princess Frost, and Shangguan. Canon mages include Nua, and utility mages include Liang, Shi, etc. The counter relationships between these mages generally follow by assassin mages counter artillery mages counter utility mages, and utility mages to some extent restrict assassin mages. However, in the current patch, utility mages are in a bit of an awkward spot. Their stats are undertuned, and their role isn't as clear, making it harder for them to effectively counter assassins. But assassin mages, like my Shiranui, still clearly dominate artillery mages, both when roaming and in team fights. Right now, all-rounded assassin mages, like my Shiranui, are the favored picks. So, how do these three styles interact logically and strategically in counters? That's something for you to consider as well. Next, let's talk about side lane counters. Among side laners, Byron can be considered at the top of the HOK ecosystem. He has favorable matchups against almost all other fighter side laners. His sustain, mobility, shield, and mechanics, combined with his well-rounded stats in both damage and tankiness, make him excellent in side lane, mid-game pushing, and even backline diving during team fights. That's why I previously mentioned he could be an upcoming unstoppable pick. Byron doesn't rely heavily on techniques, only some difficulty with A-Flash, or Skill 2 plus Flash. The key is how well players can leverage his laning skills to gain an advantage. Next, Alain is a great counter to Dharma. When Dharma uses his second skill to set up, Alain can land full damage with his first skill. His dashes also make it harder for Dharma to land the full combo with his second skill. Moreover, Alain's ultimate can dodge Dharma's wall combo. This is a counter based on skill interactions. Another example, Charlotte counters Mayne. When Mayne goes in with her combo, Charlotte can tank the burst damage with her tenacity and damage reduction, and then out-sustain Mayne. Mayne has no win condition in that exchange. These counter relationships become especially important when both players are even on gold and experience. Even with simple plays, a counter pick like this can yield a big advantage, especially in mid-game lane pressure and map control. Now let's shift focus to the counter relationships in the other positions, starting with junglers and tank junglers. These matchups are more relative than absolute. For example, Menki counters Musashi, Dianwei counters Menki, and Agudo counters Algren. I've actually seen these counters come into play in the league, but due to factors such as player proficiency or teams not developing specific strategies, these counter relationships haven't been clearly reflected. In the marksman position, we can look at counters like Direnji counters Ali, Chano counters Ali, and Ali counters Lung. These counters have more to do with how marksmen match up in terms of damage output, mobility, and survivability during trades. For supports, things get interesting. For instance, Liang counters Dia Dia, Zhang Fei, and Zhenren counter Liang, Mozi counters Ming, and Kaiyang counters Zhang Fei. This can be summarized as soft supports countering hard supports, because soft supports have the ability to kite and create space. This makes hard engages from the enemy less effective. On the other hand, hard supports counter functional supports that focus on strong engage, like Zhang Fei and Zhenren countering Liang. Hard supports have strong defensive capabilities, allowing them to interrupt or disperse the burst initiation of strong engage supports. Lastly, strong engage functional supports counter soft supports because they deny those soft supports the space they need to kite. These strong engage supports can quickly initiate or finish team fights, which makes them powerful in controlling fights. Now let's talk about off-role counters. This means a hero from one role counters a hero from a different role due to skill design or mechanics. In actual fights, the counter imposes great limitations on the other hero. For example, Lede Zhen counters Algran and Diadia, two top heroes in current patch. Lady Zhen's CC and terrain manipulation greatly restrict Algran, who lacks mobility and needs space to lifesteal. If she lands her CC, Ogran can't move or lifesteal effectively, and his ultimate often becomes ineffective. Diadia also suffers against Lady Zhen because her bouncing skill can chain through grouped-up enemies. One well-placed cast can apply CC across the whole fight, disrupting Diadia's timing and burst. Then there's Cao Cao counters Ali Cao Cao's short-range AoE burst. Multiple dashes and built-in cleanse allow him to survive Ali's poke and dive into her space. If Ali tries to go in first, Cao Cao can either kite her out or just go all in and win the trade. Their mobility is similar, but Cao Cao has better sustain and punish tools up close. And finally, Mei Yan counters Fade. This is more of a class-based off-roll counter, fighters into carry junglers. Even when Mei Yan isn't ahead, she can burst down fragile junglers like Fade with her combo before they can react. Fade doesn't really have the durability or tools to handle that kind of all-in unless he's massively ahead. This is what we call an off-roll counter. Then we have counter dynamics, because counters don't always stay the same in 2v2 or larger team fights. Things like sustainability, AoE control, CC, and target priority can shift the outcome significantly. In real games, synergy and interaction often override simple matchups. For instance, Don plus Lady Zhen versus Mai Shiranui plus Ogran. In bot lane, Dahlia plus Lung versus Ali plus Zhang Fei. Ali counters Lung, but Dahlia's poke and zoning can help Lung win trades and create pressure over multiple exchanges, swinging the lane. Inside jungle duos, Menki plus Mei Yan versus Guan Yu plus Aogran Menki lacks early game damage and has unreliable CC, so if Aogran's team focuses one target, they can burst down Menki and Mei Yan. Guan Yu also has strong follow-up and flanking pressure. One more point I want to emphasize when thinking about counters. They're not fixed, they're dynamic, and can shift based on level and item advantages, key ability usage and cooldowns, and hero power spikes and fall-off timings. I've had two memorable conversations with my players about this. First, Biren versus Alan. One of my players got solo killed on Biren. Afterward, he told me, against Alan, if you waste skill 2 as Biren, he'll chase you down and kill you. You have to use skill 2 to dodge Alain's skill 1. That's how you stay in control. This isn't just mechanics. It's a counter decision. Knowing when to hold your tools is what keeps a losing matchup playable. Second, Sunsi versus Byron. If Sunsi hits level 2 first, he can kill Byron instantly. That shows how critical early levels and skill timing are. Another example, Direnji versus Ali. On paper, Direnji is the counter, but if Ali rushes Doomsday and picks up red buff at 4 minutes, she can solo kill Direnji, even though she's the one supposedly at a disadvantage. That's because she hit her power spike, while Direnji didn't have the gear to match. The counter relationship flipped, just like that. Quiz time. Counter exists among different roles and combos. True or false? The answer is true. We can develop strategies based on different lineups because every lineup has its own game pace. What is unique about the lineup and what is its foundational pacing? Let me categorize them into the following types. Jungle invasion focus. Byron, Sakir. Heroes strong in early game, together with aggressive side laners and supports to relentlessly pressure enemy jungle areas. River control and gank. Emphasis. Heroes like Liang, Princess Frost, Diadia, Ali excel at side lanes. They easily capitalize on mid-lane numerical advantages to initiate team fights and decisively win the fight. Team fight focus. Combo, like Jing plus Mai, specializes in hard engaging to keep threatening opponents' carry. Lane push focus, Zhang Fei plus Direnji, KPL's Luben combo, focused on securing early lane advantages to keep crushing opponents' turrets. The first 3 hero picks typically lock in a team's core strategy. Subsequent selections should reinforce this foundation through complementary synergies or counter picks without deviating from the game pace. However, there's an advanced layer. Usually, the first 3 picks in your BP already lock in your lineup's play style. The remaining picks should follow the established pace, either reinforcing strengths or covering weaknesses. There's also bait picks, where you fake a weakness, force the opponent to counter, and pick heroes to counter their counters. That's where flex picks shine, like Xuan or Daqiao. You bait a counter, then pivot and counter them instead. That's the point of a bait pick. In competitive HOK lineup, understanding the